Matt here again. Today I want to go over some photos that are not before and after steroids, but rather after steroids and then after the cessation of steroids, with the disclaimer that I can't know for certain that these bodybuilders use steroids. It's sort of an assumption on my part, so don't quote me on that. I can't legally make the case or the claim that they use them. I can be pretty confident personally, but I can't go on record and state that they use them. I'm going to start with this photo of Kevin Levrone, which is over 20 years old now, and he looks amazing here. Obviously, he's as huge as can be. He's about 5'9.5", and he at his biggest was as big as a bodybuilder could possibly be in terms of thickness, and obviously a highly competitive bodybuilder, having placed runner-up at the Mr. Olympia 4 separate times, and in a very dominant competitive era. This one, I think this is from 2001. Kevin Levrone, huge as usual, just his normal big self, and what we expected from him in competition all these years. He would always look about like this. Also about the same time, around 2001, him looking, yeah, huge. I mean, there's no other way to explain Kevin. Big shoulders, triceps. He didn't really have any weak parts except for his back. I would say some people would consider a bit of a weak point, at least with respect to Ronnie and perhaps some of the other competitors of his era, Dorian Yates. So Ronnie Coleman, Dorian Yates. His legs became a weak point later in his career, but still big all around, big dude, and one of the competitive best. This photo was taken in 2004. This was not super long after Kevin's final Mr. Olympia appearance so far anyway. He plans to come back, return to the stage in 2016, but this was after a 6th place finish in 2003, and he obviously wasn't into the same protocol of whatever it might be, diet, training, I'm going to say steroids as well, and as a result he shrunk. He still has some size here, don't get me wrong. That's the cool thing about Kevin, is he looks great at any size. He can be 180, 200, 220, 240, 260 at about 5'9", 5'10", and look great at any of those weights, which is awesome. Not everybody can do that. I think with Jay Cutler and Ronnie Coleman, for example, if these guys shrink down to lower body weight, they kind of look a bit strange. Like I think the side effects of just being so large for so long, and presumably growth hormones, stuff like that, has made it so their hands are big. They just kind of look sort of like they have weight that needs to be, space that needs to be filled up in their frame. And Kevin doesn't really have that. He could be 185 at, again, 5'9", 5'10", and he could look on other bodybuilders. Ronnie Coleman, if he's under 250, he looks kind of small, like he needs to be filled out. He looks a bit, I don't know, not necessarily deformed or anything, but it's almost like he looks like he's supposed to be carrying more size. And in the times in the past that he has been 250. But with Kevin, the cool thing is he can be small, or quote small, and still look amazing and very comfortable at that size. It's really interesting. He's got some crazy genetics. This shortly after the photo before, I think this might have been from 2005, around there. He had been doing some movie work, which was kind of cool, and not something that ever really took off completely for him, but he put forth an effort. It's hard to get recognized no matter who you are in Hollywood. I mean, some bodybuilders have gotten some commercial work and stuff like that, so it's no fault of Kevin's that he didn't become a Hollywood star. I mean, even Randy Couture of the UFC, he never became a Hollywood star, and he had some interest in kind of being in the mainstream spotlight there, outside of the UFC, that is. So Kevin, and right now he might have been 200 pounds there or something like that, or 195, and as you can see, he looks really comfortable at that weight. It's just a cool thing about Kevin, and he looks very young there. He probably was 40 here, and he could pass for somebody in his 20s. So great genetics for somebody who is, and I can say this, he's a self-professed or former alcoholic, so he's abused bodybuilding, or rather, he's abused alcohol, and he did admit in Muscular Development magazine that he has used steroids. So actually, I can say with Kevin that he has used steroids. He outlined his first cycle in Muscular Development. So he just didn't, he didn't go through every detail, but he did have something in print that I could point to. But even when he's off, or at least on lower doses and looking sort of normal in size, he looks good. He looks like he carries that weight well, and that's the cool thing about Kevin. Again, kind of the similar time period, and you can see he looks young in the face despite being about 40. Looks really good, and just some, as I said, just carries his weight well. And that was also from a similar time period, looking good once again, still looking big. I think the general public can relate to this photo, which is cool. Obviously not bodybuilder competitive bodybuilder size, but still pretty good. Now that picture of Kevin at his prime, basically, and then at I think that was 1998, around there. It was either 97 or 98, 97 that he was bald, and then that's him in 2008 in the YouTube video Burning Hollywood. He looked, that was when he was at his smallest. He might have been 180 there or something like that. And even then, he was still kind of fit. I mean, granted, he might have even been under 180. And he still had some muscular shape to him. He probably was unpumped in that video and had kind of gone through a little bit of a small few week dieting period to look especially kind of not necessarily starving, but like depleted and you know, like definitely not keeping a full appearance. He probably even took this video even in the morning when he was at his most depleted or something like that. He did this on purpose. He tried to look small here. So if he had gotten a pump and put some calories in the day before, whatever, like tried to look big, he probably could have looked at least a bit bigger for his size for 180. But that's Kevin at his smallest, and I would testosterone replacement therapy in small quantities, but I can't imagine anything else. Okay, Craig Titus. Yeah, big for his time and for his height, 5'8", probably 230 or something, maybe a highest competitive weight around 250. So he had some size, probably. Yeah, I think he was 5'8" and about 245, something like that. He had competed at other times in the 230s, and so he did carry some size at 5'8", and for reasons definitely reasons that he was responsible for, but for reasons in a sense, I don't want to say outside of his control, but for regrettable reasons, he had to get off the steroid protocol and look like this. Now with Craig, I guess I don't know if he's ever admitted anywhere that he's done steroids. For the 2004 GNC Show of Strength and Muscular Development, I believe it was that contest and the issue of muscular development that covered it. He claimed that he did some last minute adjustments to get into shape. He said this for the 2005 Ironman as well. So like, what last minute adjustments can you do, really? I mean, granted, you could add some carbs or remove some carbs or keep removing your water or add some water. But I think that he was referring to diuretics. Can't quote me on that. At the same time, I mean, I don't want to say that for sure, but he's in jail now. I don't really care. And after what he's done as a person, I really just don't even care. Craig never was a super nice guy, and I guess I'm not that worried about talking badly. But so but anyway, to be fair, I don't know what wasn't using as many here because he was incarcerated, and that's from this notorious jail cell raid that he had in prison, and yeah, not in shape. So clearly, steroid protocol, food, diet, everything, training cut off, look like that. Mustafa Mohammad, this guy, and according to Milos Sarchev, and so he's kind of who knew him and I think is a legitimate source on this. Milos stated that Mustafa would be 2 weeks out of a contest with a double chin, 15% body fat, and somehow look like this during the day of the contest. So he whatever he did to cut that fast was kind of a big deal. And I think there was an issue actually at it might have been the New York Pro, but I should remember this, but it's been a while now where he did have a sort of a drug scare, blood pressure scare, allegedly bleeding nose. I believe this case was what happened, and due to whatever it is that he did, last minute preparations, might not have been drugs, but Milos had suggested some of his consumptions. But anyway, enough with the qualifiers here. I think he's on steroids here. He's huge hamstrings, shoulders, triceps are crazy, everything, chest. I mean, he had a great physique. He was huge. He was 5'8" also, and just a massive man. Another example, look at those legs. Those are like Tom Platt size legs, big Ramy legs. It was just an incredible, obviously genetics. He even claimed, I think in his Muscle Time video, that he hadn't trained legs for a month leading up to the contest that he was about to compete in. So that might have been the 2006 Arnold, and he still had huge legs inside in that contest. It has been close to a decade since I've seen that Muscle Time video, but I'm pretty sure that's exactly what he said. And this is crazy that he can be this size with legs that are that size, basically without training them or without training them much, because they're just a genetic strong point combined with whatever it is that makes a bodybuilder get so big. But it's also training and food, of course, but let's not deny that drugs are playing a part. There we have it. 2006 and off in 2009, looks like a normal human being, 5'8". I don't know, is he 190 pounds there, but just a regular looking guy who, I guess, he kind of looks like he lifts maybe, but nothing like he did in 2006. So this, and I have no reason to believe this photo is altered. I'm pretty sure it is real. Tom Prince, this guy was a crazy bodybuilder, from what I understand, in terms of just the sheer size that he carried. What I heard about Tom was that he, in person, was very much similar to Kai Green in the sense that your mind is just blown at how much size he carried in his prime. It was just didn't make sense. You look at him, it just doesn't make sense. That's the feeling that I got from Kai Green. And Kai Green, I don't even know if I've ever seen Kai Green even in a tank top. You could just tell how thick he is, even in clothes. It's unbelievable the amount of size, muscular size this man takes up. Kai Green is kind of notorious for not ever showing his muscles at Expo, even most recently at Toronto. He stayed covered up. It's kind of a thing that Kai does, but just a massive man, you can tell. And Tom Prince apparently was like that too. You can see it here. Incredible thickness, huge hamstrings on a physique that, again, 5'8", never like some of the other bodybuilders we've discussed, never really was intended for a medium height guy who's kind of, I don't know about an ectomorph, but he's like not really meaning intended by nature. So this was clearly a sight to see in person. And again, I mean, this was probably from, I think it's 1996 USA Championships when he came second to Craig Titus, either that or from his 97 win, but when he turned pro. But this, probably him at his prime in terms of his appearance, in terms of his conditioning, things like that. He did get a metrics contract in 1996 when he was an amateur because of how good he looked. So he was pretty incredible. And some would even argue he should have beaten Craig in 1996. And his funny thing is, Craig in his video stated that he would have retired from bodybuilding had he not won his pro card that year, which is kind of funny. Maybe it would have been a good thing, who knows. But either way, Tom looked amazing, and as you can see, carries a lot of size. This is just incredible. This was 2001 Olympia. This was actually, 2001 was about the time that Tom started to get the kidney issues that he had. So for him to look like this in 2001 is, and this is despite having kidney issues where he wasn't able to get into condition, he's still huge here, and this is pretty amazing to me. This was the 2001 Night of Champions where he placed third. Oh, I see Mustafa Mohammad in the background there, so which is interesting. But Tom was allegedly 263 here. That's huge for 5'8", so I don't know. And pro bodybuilders, I think, sometimes do lie about their weights. Dexter Jackson would always miss the weigh-in at the Ironman, and yet he claimed to be 235, but he might have been closer to 215. Who knows? But he might have been under 235 at least. He might have been 220. But he would miss the weigh-in. So who knows if this claim by Tom was true, but he's obviously massive here. He was in condition, and this was just probably the freakiest pro performance that he had. Even if I could argue that aesthetically he was more pleasing when he turned pro, he's obviously huge here. It's pretty crazy. And there it is, Tom Prince after he had to go off steroids in around 2003 or around then when he competed in the Ironman in 2004. So I don't know when he went off, but I can also say about Tom on the RX Power Hour by rxmuscle.com in his interview with Dave Plumbo 2011, he did talk about steroids and sort of his own experience with them. So I think I can say this, I can talk about this. I can't, I don't know for sure what Tom did, but I'm fairly sure I can make that comment. Also because in his Flex magazine article, I think it was called When the Posing Stops. This was from January 2004, I think. Well, it came out in January. I think it might have been like the February or March issue of Flex, maybe February or something. He did talk about, actually, I don't know, but one of the early the month is never the same on the magazines as when it comes out. But in that Flex magazine article, he did state that he stated to his doctor that he used tons of steroids, growth hormone, everything. But the kidney issues weren't really based on acetaminophen and things like that. Now, people laughed at that, but acetaminophen is extremely toxic on the kidneys. It's not like it's in terms of renal failure, yeah, there are patients who get it by using acetaminophen or other painkillers. Now, the interesting thing, and Tom mentioned in the story that he was told that he had kidney failure and he stopped for ice cream with his wife on the way to the hospital. This is just one of those reckless things, and I really feel like bodybuilders got to read the writing on the wall. Please, please, read the writing on the wall. If you have something like this, don't stop for the ice cream. You can go to the doctor, you can get your kidneys tested and stabilized, whatever it takes when you get to the hospital. Then ask if you can have that ice cream. And the answer might even be no. If you're going through kidney failure, you might not even want to get that ice cream ever. But Tom was laughed at for saying that acetaminophen caused his kidney failure, but in my opinion, acetaminophen probably did play a huge role. What Tom didn't state in the article, which was probably even more realistic, is that he was on painkillers outside of acetaminophen. Alluded to the fact that he didn't get much in the way of blood work done and that he encouraged that for other bodybuilders. So painkillers aside from acetaminophen, I don't want to speculate here. I've heard some things, but I can't say it on video. That probably did relate to some of his kidney issues. At the same time, opioids tend to be fairly non-toxic. So Percocets, for example, the issue with the liver is not necessarily and the kidneys isn't necessarily the opioid content. It's rather the actual Tylenol, the acetaminophen that was in Percocets that made it problematic for people who overused it. With 325 milligrams of acetaminophen per Percocet, 5 milligrams oxycodone, it isn't exactly the oxycodone content that is a problem. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that there are things other than bodybuilding drugs that have been problematic for bodybuilders, and we should sort of discuss that if we want to raise awareness about these things. Once again, Tom Prince, and you could see that was him at, I think, Dave Brulier's Dave Boulet's, forget it. Muscular development, Dave's. My French is bad. I should get that back. It's been too long since I've spoken French. I spoke it fluently until 2002 also, but anyway, that's Dave, Mad Max, his Max Muscle store. And he was doing some appearances there, and as you can see, nothing like what he used to be. So, huge bodybuilder, but just not obviously after he came off, he wasn't ever as big. Paul Dillette. Okay, great bodybuilder, one of Canada's best bodybuilders, is 6'1.5", probably competed at 285, 280, around there. Huge. I mean, this guy was just in cartoonish proportions. One of those guys who had the genetics for gaining muscle mass easily, not necessarily being as strong as he was large. Some people are the opposite. With me, I'm the opposite. I'm a lot stronger than I look. Paul being not nearly as strong as he looks, he was, I would say, most likely stronger than me, but the fact that I bench, say, like at my best 345, and I look like I do now when I bench that, and that was 2009. Paul would be like the kind of guy who might have had. I mean, I don't know exactly what he bench pressed, but you'd think that it would be like 600 looking at him, and I doubt it was. It was probably somewhere in the 400s, but you'd think he'd be able to bench press much more. But he never was as strong as he looked. But he was a massive bodybuilder, and that's what bodybuilding is about: putting on size. And here he is, just looking enormous. Again, I mean, you can't. This one. I almost had to do a double take. I'm not even sure if this photo is the morphed one, rather altered photo of Paul. It's kind of a not the greatest resolution photo, but I would say that. But regardless, he's so big that you almost don't even know when the pictures are real and when they're not. And on stage, again, huge. He had a 2006 comeback for the Montreal Pro contest in Canada. Placed 10th. Was huge. Didn't look like he did in his prime. But big guy, obviously, and this even wasn't his absolute best right here. So I think this was 1999. In 1996, he probably looked his best or closer to it. But he was still, you can tell he's huge here. And vascular, just huge, everything. Just freaky guy for sure. 1996 battle for the Olympia shot. Look at him. I mean, he's a giant of a man for sure. Another. Oh, come on. This was an ad for Muscle Tech that appeared in Muscle Mag and probably in some other print magazines as well. Look at what he looked like versus what he looked like after the cessation of everything, and this not just bodybuilding drugs per se. And I don't know for sure what he may have done. Excuse me. I don't know exactly what he did in terms of his protocol, but he probably stopped eating as much, probably stopped training as hard, everything. So as you can see, he looks pretty amazing there, and obviously in the pre-contest picture. But after he stopped everything, he was both small and fat, so kind of crazy, but a huge transformation, something that you wouldn't expect. So it's actually the last photo that I have in this presentation. It's probably going on a bit long now. What can I say? Steroids do matter. They matter a lot. They're not the only thing. Food matters a lot. Training matters. Probably not as much as the aforementioned two, believe it or not, but training does matter, of course. It matters a lot. Rest matters, recovery. Supplements matter. Genetic response is huge, huge. Because I could take everything that Paul took. I could take everything that Tom Prince took, Mustafa Mohammad, Kevin. I could use what these guys did and not be the same, not look the same. Craig Titus was, I guess, he probably, before steroids, he probably had a similar size build as me, like not that big of a dude, a medium height guy, perhaps, but I couldn't necessarily use what he used and become as big. Granted, I did hear from somebody who lived with Craig for a while that he was not eating very well. He wasn't the hardest working guy. I've heard that about, honestly, I've heard that about Paul. I've heard that about Tom. Genetics play a big part of it, and genetic response, steroids play a big part. Eating food does. Being able to handle the side effects of all these things do. It's like pharmacology when you think about it in terms of you need to do so much to be a pro bodybuilder and keep the size, and then you have to sort of deal with the side effects, and some are better at dealing with them. I have no reason to believe that I'd be able to do what they do and even eat as much as they do and not feel it. I'm sure I would. I suspect I would feel those side effects. So I'm not claiming I could look like this. I'm not saying I'd look like them if I used, but it is true that some pro bodybuilders would look like me if they did not use and if they did not eat as much and so on. So that's not the exact same statement. I'm not claiming that I'd look like them, but some percentage of them would look probably like me if they didn't have assistance. But these are the genetic elite in terms of response to steroids, I would say, and response to everything, really.